Yeah, ground zero would probably up in here somewhere, you know.
At age 99, Dr. James Yamazaki has seen things most of us can only imagine.
Where do we start?
He has not only lived through, but actually been a part of some of the most critical chapters in world history, including one that would shape his life, the U.S. atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
It's unbelievable, the strength of that blast.
James Yamazaki was born in Los Angeles. His parents had moved from Japan to California in the early 1900s. He graduated from UCLA and went to medical school in the Midwest, but all signs pointed to the U.S. joining World War II. It was imminent, so he enlisted in the Army. He got his papers 1 week before the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor.
I said, my God, Japan's really did what we feared it might do someday.
In another twist, like many Japanese Americans, Yamazaki's parents were locked up in internment camps while their son was preparing to fight for the United States. Once he finished med school, he arrived in Europe in 1944 as a combat surgeon. Within weeks, he found himself in the middle of a major German offensive. He had walked right into what would become known as the Battle of the Bulge.
Our outfit got really hammered. Out of 10,000, 7,000 were casualties within a week. So, God, the place was just littered with casualties.
Yamazaki was captured and held for the next 6 months. In his words, straggling along without food, walking hundreds of miles with his German captors, and somehow surviving U.S. bombing raids.
And I remember the German guards slamming the door to our train, and they ran for the air raid shelter. I remember it's sort of nice to be alive.
You thought you were going to die?
Yeah, because the bomb was falling all over us. Yeah.
An unbelievable nightmare.
That experience gave the young doctor a unique perspective on what it's like to be bombed, and it would come into play once the war ended.
Blown off the face of the earth.
After Yamazaki's release and Victory in Europe Day, he arrived back in the States just in time for another historic day. The U.S. dropping an atomic bomb first on Hiroshima, then 3 days later on Nagasaki.
I can't conceive myself being in such a situation.
But soon enough, he would be at ground zero. In 1949, the Atomic Bomb Casualty Commission invited him to go to Nagasaki to study the impact of those bombs on women who were pregnant at the time and their babies.
Children that were born encountered stillbirth, neonatal death, and children who survived developed what we call a small head and with mental retardation and seizures.
Survivors literally painted a graphic picture of what happened under the mushroom cloud. Yamazaki also heard from local doctors who lived to tell stories of the roaring fire and the fallout that followed.
It cremates them in the form that they were there at the moment. So if they were carrying a baby, it was holding a baby there and just standing.
The bombings ended World War II, but left 2 cities in ruins and generations suffering from cancer and other effects of radiation poisoning. Some 150,000 died in Hiroshima and 80,000 in Nagasaki, both considered conservative estimates.
Do you think people still don't understand?
Of course they don't, you know. No, I don't think they do. How could you understand the death of 80,000 lives at an instant?
What he saw over his year and a half in Nagasaki fueled his research for the next 5 decades. The pediatrician became an expert on the subject and wrote a book.
Yeah, this Nagasaki.
While he won't say the decision to drop the bombs was wrong, he uses his influence to tell anyone who will listen, this cannot happen again. He uses 9/11 as an example. Introduce one of today's nuclear weapons into that equation, and there would be a 10-mile circle of devastation, possibly millions dead, and radioactive fallout that would spread for 200 miles. As he approaches his 100th year on this planet, a worst-case scenario, all-out nuclear war, is something he doesn't even want to imagine. For now, He wants to see future generations learn more about what he's seen firsthand, because he says it's their lives that are at risk. His only hope is that if that time comes again, ration and reason will trump everything else.
What would you like to see happen with the stockpile of weapons we do have?
Or eliminate them completely. It is thousands. We have thousands. God, you only need one to cause all the devastation you'd ever want to see. And we have thousands. There's no reason to keep them.